If you've been following the podcast for a while, you'll know that a little while back, I announced I was talking to investors about my startup AI Box. We ended up getting such a huge influx of people talking to us that we kind of changed our strategy regarding fundraising, and we have a really exciting announcement coming soon. But if you were an investor that had previously reached out to me and jumped on a call, make sure to reach out again. I have some really exciting news to give to you, or if you're an investor today looking to invest in an absolutely groundbreaking AI startup, I'm going to leave my email, jaden@aibox.ai, in the description, and I'll give you the inside scoop. Today on the podcast, I want to talk about a really interesting AI startup, and it's called Tape. Essentially, it's a software for musicians, and it's to help them get studio quality noise reduction through AI. And the reason why I'm interested in this is because I have been using a very similar tool. It's essentially called Adobe Audio Enhancer, and I've been using this since almost the beginning of this podcast. I'm sure, if you've been around for a long time, I don't know if you've noticed any difference in audio quality, but at the beginning of this podcast, I used to have just like a $40 microphone. It was a Fifine microphone off of Amazon, and it sounded okay, but I would just take it and run it through Adobe Audio Enhancer, and the quality sounded, in my opinion, like studio quality. It was great. And of course, since then, I have upgraded my microphone and whatnot, but I still use Adobe Audio Enhancer even to this day on my recordings. Now, what I want to do here for this podcast is this whole intro here. I'm not going to put this through Adobe Audio Enhancer. I'm not going to put this through anything. And the second half of this, after this intro here, essentially, I'm going to put the rest of this podcast through Tape. We're going to test out Tape, and I'll tell you a little bit about the startup and whatnot. But you can pretty much use this whole intro here as a sample of no audio enhancer. You can use the second half, everything after this intro, as an example of what Tape does. And if you want to know what Adobe Audio Enhancer sounds like, you can listen to pretty much all of my other podcasts, and I'll give you a rundown on some of the pros and cons of it and whatnot. But anyways, let's get into the podcast. Welcome to the world's #1 AI podcast, AI Chat. I'm your host, Jaden Schaefer. Have you ever wanted to start your own podcast? I record and publish podcasts on a platform called Spotify for Podcasters, and I absolutely love it. Essentially, you can upload from your phone or computer, and it distributes to every platform that plays podcasts. They support video podcasts, and you can make money on the platform with ads or even podcast subscriptions, something that has made my life so much easier as a podcaster. So if you're interested, I highly recommend you give it a try. You can download the Spotify for Podcast app, or go to spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your podcast today. After Apple decided to put an end essentially to its Music Memos app, which I think was really loved by a lot of musicians for essentially like coming up with song ideas, the startup Tape has decided to step up to the plate and I guess kind of fit into the same space. So essentially this is a new company. They have a new AI-powered noise reduction algorithm, which is capable of transforming any audio into studio quality sound. I watched a demo. So I've played around with them and looked at a demo of what they're capable of doing. And I've also looked at kind of their like intro video explaining a little bit about their algorithm and how it works and whatnot. And I have to say it's a fairly solid, like it definitely does the job. So it's a solid company, solid software pass. My only thing that I have doubts on is whether they're going to be able to really stand out when you have someone like Adobe Audio Enhancer, who technically does offer this same service for free, and I've been using it for almost a year now. And so like there definitely are other things in the space, and when they come from a big company, there's definitely going to be some competition there. So they are doing some interesting things, and I want to cover those specifically on the podcast. But essentially, this is an AI-based denoiser, and it was launched this week as it has, I think, a complimentary web app. But Tape It, which I think is called Tape It, has revealed plans to license the technology to other vendors, and later the denoiser is going to be integrated into Tape It's main app. Now, the reason why I think that's interesting there is because Adobe right now has the product and you can go use it yourself, but they're not doing an API. And I honestly think there's some massive potential for any startup that launches an API. An example of this is like Midjourney for image creation is an incredible platform, but like it doesn't have an API, and I have lots of software products that I would love to build the functionality of Midjourney into, and I'm not going to go right at this very moment go through the work of setting up an API and building that all up myself, especially because it's built on Discord, which is, I don't know, kind of weird. And, they could change things at any time and it'd wreck my whole API. So I'm just not going to go through that. And when you have something like Dolly that came out and I'm like, yeah, Dolly's like fairly good, almost as good. I'm just going to grab Dolly and integrate it. And maybe a Midjourney comes out with an API in the future and I'll make that my priority. But like at the moment, it's you kind of have to look at the best technology that's also the easiest to implement. So when there's really high barriers to entry, it's definitely going to slow down your platform's adoption. So all that being said, Adobe does not have the API and Tapeit does. And so I think Tapeit's going to have a lot of success in a sense that platforms are going to be able to add this functionality to their platform and, essentially have this amazing effect without having to go and develop this technology in-house. And, I'm sure they would all love to have Adobe Audio Enhancer, but Adobe Audio Enhancer is trying to keep that for themselves, not share it. So I think in this regard, Tapeit is going to see some solid success. And I do see like a really strong path for this company because of that. So Tapeit was essentially the idea of Thomas Walter and Jan Nash. Both of them are musicians who founded the company back in 2020. And the objective behind Tapeit was to offer a user-friendly solution similar to Apple's Memo app. But essentially, they had enhanced some AI capabilities that were built into this. So Walter's experience at Spotify after its acquisition of his startup Sonalytic, combined with Nash's background in classical opera and engineering, gave the ideal founders the whole idea for Tapeit. So the initial version of Tapeit app automatically detected musical instruments and annotated recordings with some visual markers, and it was kind of simplifying the retrieval process for musicians. Users could also customize the recordings with additional notes, markers, and photos, and the app quickly gained a lot of popularity. I think it had around 10,000 monthly active users, which is really impressive. However, I think the team's aspirations didn't quite stop there. They continued to really focus on integrating the AI into their platform, which I think resulted in the latest offering, which is their AI-powered denoiser. And this, I think they said they built this thing over 2 years, so it took a minute. But essentially, the tool addressed the problem faced by musicians, which was, of course, background noise is very common. Unlike conventional noise reduction methods, which require expensive studio setups and intricate software, Tapeit's solution is simple, right? You just, the AI really quickly just removes any distracting sounds, hums, hisses, all that kind of stuff, gives you a great audio quality. The same thing that, I get done with Adobe Audio Enhancer for every single podcast episode. So I think this is interesting. Walter's trying to highlight how novel this tool is. And I'm not sure what his opinion is on Adobe Audio Enhancer, which has been out for a while, but essentially he said, quote, "What we developed is an automatic version of the denoising software you'd find in professional studios over the past 15 years. I think this startup conducted an academic study to prove the efficiency of their product against some leading industry denoisers. And I think the uniqueness of Tapeit's AI method is evident. Walter said, "We're the first to train such a system," which is, of course, a bold claim considering Adobe has a audio enhancer. So in a detailed video, the company kind of elaborated on how most existing noise reduction systems either focus solely on speech or necessitate expert manual intervention. So Tapeit's method, I think, and maybe what they're calling groundbreaking here, is linking a neural network controller to a noise reduction algorithm, which is enabling auto denoising of a really big variety of audio signals. And I will give it to them. They're doing this on music, which is definitely going to be harder than just audio, right? Here I'm sitting talking and they can figure out if, one of my kids screams in the background. I don't know if you guys hear that, but definitely happens while I'm recording podcasts. And so Adobe Audio Enhancer can chop that out. But if you're singing a song and there's a violin that's really high pitch and a guitar, being able to pick out all the different instruments and remove the background noise without removing the instruments and the vocals, I think is a lot harder. So I will give it to them that they're doing something, probably a lot harder than Adobe Audio Enhancer. Although I have thrown songs in there. I will say Adobe Audio Enhancer, one area I think it struggles with a bit is when you have multi-voices. So I wonder if anyone has really seen this before, but sometimes when I do interviews, I run all the audio for my interviews through Adobe Audio Enhancer. And sometimes I feel like when it's trading off between me and the person talking, it can mute them a little early. So like their word gets cut off or it gets quieter, or the same at the start of my words or whatever. So like there is that issue. And I think that'd be super exacerbated in music. And so I don't really think Adobe Audio Enhancer would be a viable tool here, which is why I think something like Tape It would be a really successful option. And I think, discussing kind of the broader potential for AI in the creative sector, Walter, who's our CEO, said, quote, "While many are thrilled about AI's creative potential, we're passionate about AI tackling mundane challenges. We handle background noise so artists can zero in on their creativity." I think it's smart of them. They're really kind of focused on the specific niche of artists and musicians, built something specific for this, because all audio, might be a little bit big and have a lot of competition. I think the influence of AI in refining audio quality isn't confined just to music. Several firms like Podcastle, with its recent Magic Dust AI, are leveraging AI to produce really good sounding like audio for podcasters. Tape It's team, though, is from Berlin, London, Los Angeles, Stockholm. They got a bunch of solid, really talented audio researchers there. And so I think despite previous funding offers, the company has been completely bootstrapped to maintain its technological edge. Walter, talking about this, said, quote, "Our work is rooted in research, and the unpredictability of the timeline made us wary of investor pressure." However, I think given the rapid evolution of the AI landscape, Tape It is now looking at doing a round of funding, although no official decisions. They haven't announced it publicly yet, but I definitely think this is one that you'd probably want to keep an eye on, and they may be pulling something in the future. And I think there is a lot of potential for this startup. So I think it'd be very interesting to see where that goes, how much they're able to raise, whatnot. I think it's inevitable. I don't think it's like if they will or won't, but it's just when they'll raise money. So definitely an interesting startup to follow. And like I mentioned, this whole segment of the podcast was put through Tape It's noise reduction platform. I can tell you, my kids are playing in the background. They got these indoor little Ziggle cars that they're zooming around the house in and yelping because it's the end of the day, and they're having a lot of fun. So if you can't hear them, Tape It is doing a good job. But I mean, really listen to the quality of the audio and then compare this to other podcasts that I've done, and kind of the tone of my voice and all that kind of stuff. I think will give you a good idea of the quality of that Tape It is able to do, and the success that they'll see in the future.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Thank you for listening to the AI Chat Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, I'd appreciate it if you rate me wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're looking for an innovative group of AI enthusiasts, make sure you check out our Discord channel and also our Facebook community. It's obviously a lot more interactive than a podcast, where we can actually share software tools, prompts that we're using in everyday AI. I'll leave a link for those in the description below.